This is a production of Cornell University.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate the opportunity to participate in the Hort seminar today. And we're here to highlight some of the services that are available through the library and to make sure you know that I'm the liaison to this department, and I'm essentially the go-to guy if you're not sure who to approach within the library about something. But hopefully some of the things we're going to be telling you today will get you to think about the library, perhaps at times or in ways that you haven't in the past. And so I'm going to highlight a few different resources and projects. Kelee Pacion, one of my colleagues, will be talking a bit about library instruction. Jenkins, another colleague, will be talking about geospatial information and services that we provide. And then Wright will be talking more about data services that we have, data management services that we have within the library. So I've been around Mann Library for a little while. I know many of you. In fact, I know many of my colleagues in Geneva as well, since I was the librarian at Geneva for about 12 years. Well, some of you, that may be the way you think about the library, and in fact, that view may be a little bit fuzzy for you, but we still do books, though it's sort of starting to fade away a little bit. But we do many things in addition to providing information resources in print form, as well as in electronic forms. So one of the things we do in the library is we have public gallery space, and I know that some of you have actually utilized that in the past, and that's available for faculty and students to do group presentations or individual presentations. So to give you a sense of the space and some of the different uses. So here on the right you see some of the individual study rooms that you can sign out for a period of time if you need some quiet space. In the upper left, you see that we have also some presentation practice spaces. So if you, as a student, or anyone for that matter, need a space to practice that presentation, we have a separate room for that kind of thing, or it can be used as a group study room. And in the lower left, you can see some of the collaborative space that we have created, mostly on the second floor. Increasingly, classes as well as just individuals need to work together on projects. And so you can see there where several students can cluster around a single monitor to share work on a project. There's also a wide variety of seating types or study space types for anybody to use in the library. And this is in the Bissett, also in the Bissett collaborative space. You can see comfortable chairs, you can see sort of bar type stools, you can see bean bags. There's a wide variety of study spaces, and there you can get a sense of how they get used. We also have this monitor in the lobby space, which is available for you to promote things that you have, an event, perhaps a new class that you're offering. You can use that, contact us, and you can get a slide and it cycles through the slides. I'm sure that many of you have seen that, and some of you have used that. Another service that I want to point out is the Copyright Information Center. And again, I'm just highlighting a few of the services and projects that we have. The Copyright Information Center is a collaborative effort with the library, the University Council, the campus store, and CIT. And you can bring any of your copyright questions to this either by contacting, using the contact form that's found on the website, or you can email them, or just contact me and I can help you get connected. But you may be wanting to publish a chapter in a book or perhaps a whole book, and you're wondering about whether or not you can retain the copyright to that rather than turning it over to the commercial publisher. And people in this group can advise you on that. And in fact, we highly recommend that you do retain your copyright whenever possible. There have been stories on campus of faculty members who have published an article, and the copyright belonged then to the journal in which it was published, and later wanted to be able to reuse one of the tables or graphs that was in that and had to pay $300 in order to reuse his own work because he had given up his copyright when he published it in that journal. We can also do individual consultations, so each of the librarians here have their own specialty and would be glad to meet individually with faculty or students. And you can see a list of some of the ideas, some of the areas that we'll be glad to meet one-on-one and consult with you on. And this is just a copy of the web page where you can submit that request, and it'll get passed on to the appropriate person with expertise in the area that you need. I'd like to mention just briefly TEAL. Some of you may be familiar with TEAL. It's a project that was started by Mann Library, I guess probably 10 years or so ago. TEAL stands for the Essential Electronic Agricultural Library, and it's an effort to make scholarly works, particularly in agriculture, but other related subjects as well, available in the developing world. So this is an offline system. Many of the research institutions in some of the developing countries don't have regular and consistent internet access, and so this is an offline system. There are special arrangements with the publishers, total of 80, more than 80 publishers, and this is something that's been going on in Mann Library for a while, and it's been received very well. And you may have also noticed a recent press release where we received a Gates Foundation grant in the area of $4.9 million to continue to build this and expand both the content that's there as well as the number of sites where it is available.
Is it distributed on hard drives, or how
Yes,
is it
at this point it's distributed on hard drives. Originally, when we started this, we were sending out many CDs, but it's now on hard drives. Yep. So at this point, 400 institutions scattered around the world. The concentration has been Africa. There's more effort with this new grant to reach out to South Asia and Southeast Asia, I believe, as well. And the eligible, when it mentions eligible countries, the gross domestic product, I believe it is what is measuring whether or not they're eligible. So if it's high enough, the country's not eligible, and they'd be expected to purchase from the commercial publishers. But if it's low enough, then it's countrywide available. And it's still, there's a fee associated with it, but it's substantially reduced from what commercial subscription prices would be. So that's an example of some of the international work that we're doing here in the library. This is one more project that I would just like to mention real briefly. This is one that I'm directly involved in. The Bailey Hortorium has a very large collection of seed and nursery catalogs. A large portion of that is actually housed in Mann Library in the special collections. They go back to, I think the earliest catalog is actually a broadside from about 1771. And we, in collaboration with 3 other institutions, did receive a grant recently which will allow us to digitize some of our seed and nursery catalogs. We are doing this in conjunction with the Biodiversity Heritage Library, which is a consortium of about 15 different libraries, mostly in botanical garden libraries and natural history museum libraries. Cornell and Harvard are the 2 academic institutions that are collaborators in this. And the goal here is to make the biodiversity literature very broadly conceived, basically life sciences literature, available for free, open access on the web. And this gives you some sense of the size of it. Anybody heard of Biodiversity Heritage Library before? Okay, a couple of you, great. So the collaborators in this case are Missouri Botanical Garden, and they're taking the lead. And what we're actually, the main point of the whole project, the leading point is to create crowdsourcing and gaming on the biodiversity heritage site so that participants can actually contribute to the correction of OCRing of the text. So these old texts that are in here, many of them are old, not all of them. There's varying fonts, there's varying languages with different characters, so when the text itself is OCR'd, it's read by the computer, the accuracy level is not real high. And so a game will be developed that will allow users to actually correct that text error and to improve the full text discovery in the system. So New York Botanical Garden and Cornell are involved in this mainly to contribute yet another sort of genre or format of material to Biodiversity Heritage Library, which is mainly journals and books. And so we're adding seed catalogs sort of as a different type of material that this gaming will be applied to as well. And so we're coordinating with New York Botanical Garden on digitizing some from both of our collections. They have a very significant collection there as well. And those are the highlights that I wanted to provide, and I'll turn it over to Kelee, and unless there's one or two questions right now, we'll take questions at the end. Okay, Kelee.
Hello, my name is Kelee. I just want to talk to you a little bit about instruction and the types of instruction that we have at MAN. It doesn't necessarily have to deal just with faculty teaching classes. We do have some graduate groups contacting us to maybe set up workshops that we could demonstrate some of our services or things that can help them in their own research. So, we are your partner in seeking information. And I kind of styled my slides after like a paper, like a science paper that you might have your students writing. So here's a little abstract of what happens when you partner with the libraries. When we set up instruction, if you're doing a session that's in person with us, it's librarian-led instruction. You partner with us to develop different types of assessment of the student learning, and the whole goal is to improve the types of informational resources the students use and can find. And it comes from these questions. Have you ever thought that students should be finding better quality sources? Do you ever wish that your students or even yourself could break away from Google or even Google Scholar and find better quality sources, or even more sources that are available on Google? Or have you ever wanted to help students build a better research paper? If these questions have ever come up to you, or maybe they've just now come up to you, you might want to schedule some instruction. Here's a little review of some literature. This is taken from the Cornell Strategic Plan, and you can see that information literacy is the 6th one down, and that's specific to the library. Students will be able to access, evaluate, and use a variety of relevant information sources. But if you look through several of them, there are several that kind of relate to looking for information, such as communication skills, be able to speak articulately. I know that seems like a stretch, but if they can find the information, they can research it, and they have more to say about the subject. Reasoning, self-directed learning, that's a huge one. The whole goal of our library instruction is also to be partnering with you to make lifelong learners. Okay, so here are the materials you'll need. You'll need the request form, and I will go to that real quick. Okay, so the request form is found on the MAN Library's website under Workshops and Instruction, and Request Instruction right here. And it's just a single form for any request you want. And you just quickly fill it out. And once you fill it out, the big thing you need to worry about is the preferred date of the session. Don't just put one if you can help it. And you want to schedule this as early as possible. You may think a month is enough time, and it usually is, but if it's during our peak season, a month is not enough time, and you may not get the preferred session. So the best time to do it is probably, if you're going to do it for spring, December is the best time to make a request. Or if you're going to make the request, make it in April, because January, February, and even into March are peak times, and it's really hard to get instruction. Okay, and the other materials you'll want to have ready and available will be the assignment for the class, That way, when we have a meeting, you know what you want from us, so we can actually give you the information you need instead of have just a general service. You want their calendar to schedule your class. You want a syllabus for the course so you can share it with us so we can make sure we're providing the best services possible. And we do ask, and you don't have to, we ask that you allow us to partner with you on Blackboard so we can create a folder and we can flip the classroom as much as possible so that when the students come in and meet with us, they can actually have more hands-on and we can answer questions instead of just talk at them. Okay, so after you make the request, usually what I will do is I will partner you with your liaison librarian. In your case, your liaison librarian is Marty, but he is not always available, so all the librarians at MAN are actually able to take your request and provide the same level of service as Marty. And in fact, we would actually partner with him during the meeting so that he could bring up any other sources that we may not be aware of. And then when you do the meeting, you're going to determine the outcome of the collaboration and the assignment. So you've given them an assignment and you want to collaborate with us, but we want to make sure we have the right outcome. And you want to determine the type of instruction. And I'm going to talk about the types of instruction. So librarian-led instruction would just have us be in front of the class and go through all the different services that we have available. We also offer LibGuides. I'm going to give you an example of a LibGuide for a professor that is new and she's in animal sciences. And she's actually not teaching a research paper, but she was like, oh my goodness, when she heard about this, she's like, this is the best thing ever. Can you create a LibGuide that's a repository of stuff related to animal genetics? Even though she's not teaching a research paper, she thought it would be great to have all these information available to the students in one place. And it's in progress, so we're continuing to add to it, and I'm going to curate it myself, or Marty may curate it himself. And she has some collaboration in there where she tells us some new things that she finds and adds it, and then we're continuing to add things ourselves. So even if you're not teaching a research paper, LibGuides are great for you. And then we also have these two samples of tutorials. I'm going to show you the first one. This is a series of classes that have been developed over, has it been 10 years that they've been doing this? Around 10 years. So this is high level, takes about 10 years to develop. Honestly, it does. And if you look at it, the instructor of the library sessions works closely with the professor, and it's kind of like a sequence series of tabs that relate to assignments that are related to the agricultural, what's it, agriculture engineer, economics management? Is that what it is? Applied economics, sorry. I'm newer here, it's only my 6th month. Right, so he works with the professor to develop all these tabs, and there are some library instructions that are actually graded and some that are not, and it just walks students through each section of the library research they need to do that specific type of paper or assignment for the class. So if you want something like this, yes, we can do it, but it's going to be a lot of partnership and it's going to take a lot of time. The LibGuide I showed you before took us about an hour to get together, so you can see. But it's not done. Yes?
Can you explain a little bit more what that LibGuide is? Maybe I can just not be very.
Which one are you? There's two
This
LibGuides.
one you have open right now.
Right, so this
would
one,
create that and the students just go to the one.
they just go to, there's a URL right here, which is guides.library.cornell.edu/animal-genetics. So we kind of kept it simple. So they go here, and she had specific browsers she wanted them to be able to use. So I put them in here. And then some tutorials. We also are going to do it. I don't think I have the PubMed tutorial in there. I have to add a PubMed tutorial because a lot of students have problems with PubMed and how to use it. We're going to add more major associations. Oh, we aren't finished yet. Yeah. I found some online. I was a teacher before, so I found some online tutorials and simulations for genetics. So the University of Utah has an excellent site, and it's kind of, I know it's animal genetics, but it's for basic genetics too, so we kind of added that information. Did that answer your question? Kind of? Is there a specific question you want that I didn't get? Okay. So it's just a repository of stuff for all the students to use related to animal genetics. So we're going to add major associations for different, like the dairy cattle and goats and all the animals that they might study in animal genetics related to the pre-vet program and the agricultural side of it. And in this LibGuide, sorry, this one is just, they're doing a financial analysis, so they're going to go to the databases they need And then there are videos that they can watch that the librarian has made that walks them through how to do it. And the librarian's very much embedded in the class and has a lot of review sessions with them, and then tells them how to calculate ratios. So it's basically kind of supplemental to what the instructor's teaching them. And then I have one more I was going to show you real quick. And this is a nutrition tutorial. This one I think is about 5 years in the making, and you can see it's much simpler looking. So what it actually does is links to tutorials that can be embedded into Blackboard, I believe. And it's just, let's see if I haven't done it yet. Oh, it doesn't let me do it. Oh, done. Okay. So basically it's related to a topic of choosing a nutrition controversy, and it leads them through how do you evaluate sources, how do you find a controversy that you want to look for, where do you find the information. It has blogs, it has CQ Researcher. It's just basically a tutorial that walks them through and then gives them a quiz at the end. So it's part of the assessment process. Any questions on that one? Okay, so the results. After you've had the class, we will do a post-assessment of the session because we want to make sure the students learn what we had set up in the beginning. So we're working on developing different classroom assessment tools that would be embedded in the class so it doesn't seem like they're being assessed again, but they actually are. And then we receive feedback from you on what worked and what did not work, because the goal is to kind of keep fine-tuning the class until it gets better and better and we're more efficient in what we're doing. So the assignment would be reworked based on the assessment. Every one of us does this, and the more information you can give us to change, the better. So, conclusion. We're your partners in improving the information-seeking behaviors of yourself, of students, anyone you know. We're driven by desired outcomes and assessments, and we are linked to the academic competencies as outlined in the strategic plan. Our future research, because we're growing and we don't have as many librarians as needed for the kind of classes we're getting asked to do, we're trying to look for ways to make more embedded library instruction and use different technologies that are online so we can expand our services. And any other ideas you might have, we're open to those ideas. And now, Yuki.
All right, so my name is Keith. Hello, everyone. So I'm the GIS librarian, and everyone who's not using GIS as a technology doesn't have any idea what GIS is, so I should start with that. It's basically Geographic Information Systems, which is why I think they put another word in my title that actually is a full word. Geospatial, maybe that gives a clue that what sorts of things I deal with. So GIS at MAM Library, I provide the main support. I also have a colleague who helps folks out with the workshops, data, and consultations, and I'll walk through each of these. So with the workshops, we offer introductory workshops, and I say introductory because it's like 2 hours, just the tip of the iceberg for various GIS software. We've done ArcGIS for a long time. Some of you might be familiar with that. It's the one that tends to be used by the Cornell courses. There's a GIS course in crop and soil science, for example, and they all use ArcGIS. Well, a few years ago, they used to use Manifold, and I know there's a lot of grad students hanging around who still use Manifold, so we do introductory workshops for that. And then QGIS is an open source GIS program. All these do the same thing, by the way, more or less, but the interfaces are completely different. So sometimes if you've used one, it's helpful to go to the other workshop. But QGIS is an open source program, and I'm hoping to offer a new workshop later this spring, date to be determined. But the other two programs, we already have the workshops up on the workshop schedule that I think Marty, someone pointed to. On the Man Library website, we have a whole bunch of workshops there. In terms of data, Man Library has hosted for about 15 years a repository of geospatial data that's focused on New York State. So we have data in here across the state, things like agricultural districts, the USGS topographic maps, elevation data, all sorts of things. We have a lot of data specific to Tompkins County because we have a pretty close relationship with the Tompkins County folks in the city of Ithaca. So we have a lot richer data sets for Tompkins than the rest of the state. But then we also have some research-oriented data sets that were created here at Cornell. There was a study of French Creek watersheds in western New York, and just knowing that we had this repository, there was a connection made with the researchers doing that, and we now host that data for them. So if you're generating data especially if it's in New York State, I'd be interested in talking with you to see if it's the sort of thing that would be useful to distribute to the public through something like this. In the long term, we are also interested in migrating to a new technology, which will also enable us to move beyond New York State, because I know there's a lot of research that's being done here at Cornell that's not focused on New York State, so it'd be nice to provide a home for that as well. This newer portal, it's called Open GeoPortal, was originally developed at Tufts University, and basically we'll be migrating, our servers being set up today, I think, migrating our data over into this format, so you'll be able to just zoom into an area, get a list of all the data sets that apply that. You can narrow it down by keywords, and then you can even preview the data. This is an example of a street center lines for Somerville, Massachusetts, and you can kind of preview that, click on things, and see what data is available for each street segment. So you can imagine previewing other data sets. Maybe it's a tree data set. You could click on the tree and see what data is available. Is it the species? Is it the diameter of the tree? What other information is available in that data set? So it gives you a good opportunity to preview the data set before downloading a giant thing and booting up your ArcGIS or whatever you have. I've also been working on something I call the GeoLoad. This is for people who are looking for the mother lode of geospatial data. And the idea is basically a catalog of websites on the internet anywhere in the world that host geospatial data. So just describing them, basically, so this covers China, it's historical GIS data, and it's mainly boundaries, for example. That's the sort of level of detail. So the idea is that you can come in here, limit it to your particular area of interest or a particular topic like transportation or forests or whatever it might be, to narrow down to a few websites that you have to go search out, rather than just doing wild Google searches and coming up with all sorts of irrelevant things that you have to wade through. So the bulk of what I do tends to be one-on-one consultations with students, staff, faculty, and there are 4 boxes on this slide template. So these were the top 4 things I do: troubleshooting software, converting data, mapping, and geospatial analysis. So troubleshooting software, whenever you try to use ArcGIS. Does anyone here use ArcGIS? Have you ever come up with errors before? Ever? Okay. And a lot of times you get these weird messages. It doesn't really make any sense. What does this mean? What can I do? So just, even if I don't even know what the tool is supposed to do, I can probably help you figure out how to get it to go through the process without coming up with the error. At least that's my hope. So there's so many tools in ArcGIS and the other GIS programs. I don't know every single thing in there. So there's sometimes a limit to how much help I can provide, but basic troubleshooting is definitely something that I try to cover. Converting data is a whole other thing. In this case, someone had an Excel spreadsheet of farms, I believe that were all producing fibers, so like llama farms and sheep and goats and all that sort of thing. And they only had the street addresses. They wanted to see where that was geographically. So that involved some conversion to geocode those addresses to get latitude and longitude coordinates, so then they could do further analysis or mapping with that data set. Another form of converting data, I was trying to remember what the original data set was up there. It was basically a database of trees and the amount of forested area of different species. So first I had to isolate all the oak trees, and then the person was interested in aggregating that by county, so to get a total count of approximate acreage of oak trees in each county, so that then they could pick out selected counties for like a random sample or for further research or interventions. Mapping is a very time-consuming process. If you've ever tried to create a completed map with lots of labels, notice there's no labels on here. That made it a lot easier, right? Because as soon as you have different layers of data and lots of different labels, and you want everything to be legible and clear, and it's a static image that you can't zoom into anymore because it's going into your published journal paper, it can be very time-consuming. I don't do mapping myself, but I can help advise you on what tools you might need, how you might be able to get the labels to work out the way you want. This was a case, someone was studying coral reefs in the Caribbean and needed a way to depict the direction and velocity of ocean currents in different times of the year. So we worked with Manifold to figure out how to get the symbology to work, to get the arrows at the right angles, at the right, in the right sizes. This was another example. Someone was studying, I believe, frogs, particular species in Central America. they had done all this genetic testing, and they knew the genetic distances between these, and they wanted to see how that compared with the geographic distances. And the thing that was interesting is that there's this mountain range, and there's no way these frogs could have ever gone over those mountains, so they had to try to look at the genetic distances and geographic distances to figure out which way they may have migrated historically. And this is in Tajikistan, a map of ethnic regions in that area. So there's just some examples. This is one that actually did get involved with helping with the labeling a lot. Boy, was that time consuming. So if you're going to do mapping, set aside some nice time to work on that. In terms of analysis, the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to do. And as I mentioned, there's these 3 different programs that I'm familiar with, and they each have different ways of doing things. And but more or less they have the same sorts of tools. And sometimes you have an idea in your head about what you want to analyze, and maybe just crunch, get certain data out of the GIS program and bring it into your statistics package that you might be more familiar with. So the question is, well, what function do I need to run? So I can help you identify what tools you might actually want to use. This was an example of crime in Washington, D.C. It was a terrifying data set when you open up and there's these points everywhere across. It was just 1 year of data of arrests. But this was a basic density analysis to see where the hot spots were. I think the researcher on this was looking at arrests before and after they made some policy change about how late the subway ran and what times the bars had to close. And so that's been an interesting project they were working on. This is a little more to the natural sciences here. This is a geospatial analysis of viper species richness in the Western Hemisphere. So someone was looking at analyzing where there are more species of vipers in each region, and this is just sort of a heat map of that. And then he was comparing it with various other factors, environmental factors, trying to understand what would help to lead to this rich diversity. And so to do that, you have to figure out what tools you need. I'm not an expert on all these tools by any means, but I can help you point you to the correct tools to use. But really, it's more about troubleshooting and just trying to deal with all these error messaging. So if you need any help with any of that, come see me.
Good. I'm glad somebody put my name on this slide because I realized I forgot to put my name on these slides that I provided. So I'm here to talk to you about research data management services at the library and at Cornell University. So as the slide before this said, my name is Sarah Wright, and I'm the life sciences librarian, so I'm from the library, but I'm also part of this research data management service group, which is campus-wide, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in this presentation. But first, why all the buzz about data management? Why are we talking about data management? Funders are increasingly encouraging researchers to share their data. So this report was put out way back in 2008 at this point, and this was the work of almost 24 different federal agencies who got together and talked about what we needed to do to harness the power of digital data for science and society, the title of the report. And they, in this report, described data management plans pretty thoroughly, and the plans that have since, the requirement that has since come out from the National Science Foundation that you have to have a data management plan with every grant proposal really mirrors the guidelines that they put out in this report. So the NSF already has that requirement, and we're increasingly seeing and hearing about other agencies that are requiring it. In fact, last January, the OSTP put out this mandate that any federal agency that spends over $100 million in their conduct of research needs to develop a plan to support increased public access to the results of research funded by the federal government. So this is happening. We're going to see this from more and more agencies. This would be the USDA, lots of agencies. Publishers are also requiring or suggesting data sharing. So Nature and Science are very high profile, but a lot of other journals also require that you submit your data along with your publication. So there are requirements from publishers. So what funders generally want to see in a data management plan. This is very broad. This isn't necessarily specific to the National Science Foundation. But generally, in a data management plan, you should describe what data you expect to collect in the course of the project. What data or metadata formats will you be using? Will you be using any standards or data formats that are particularly good for preservation, et cetera, details like that. Why are you using those data and metadata formats that you're choosing? It's always good to explain why. They also would like to hear about your plans for storing and preserving your data. And how are you going to preserve access to that data beyond the course of the grant? How long do you plan on keeping your data? You know, maybe your data is only valuable for 5 years, and so that's okay. Explain that you're only going to keep this data set for 5 years and it's not important beyond that. Alternatively, maybe your data is very important for a very long time, a period of time, so you want to explain that and how you plan on making sure that it's available for that long period of time. And how do you plan on sharing your data and disseminating it? So this is like broader impacts. But this is a very quick presentation, so I'm really not here to tell you about the details of how to create a data management plan or plan, really. I'm here to let you know that there is support for Cornell investigators. So I mentioned the Research Data Management Service Group earlier, a group that I'm part of. We're a virtual organization, and we include people from the Center for Advanced Computing, the library, Cornell Institute for Social and Economic Research, IT at Cornell, and others. And basically what we are is we're just a single point of contact. So if you have a question related to data management plans, you can ask us. If you have a question related to where should I store my data, what's the best solution, short term or long term, you can come have a conversation with us about that. If you want us to come and talk to your department about data management plan for longer than 10 minutes, we'll also come and talk to you. Or your lab, maybe your lab is concerned with how to best foster collaboration and sharing of data sets with another lab or something like that. And so we're happy to come and talk to groups about issues like that as well. I don't have cards with me today, but I would like to point out that the URL for our website is down at the bottom of each of these slides, so it's data.research.cornell.edu. And if at any point you want to contact us, you can contact us at rdmsg-help@cornell.edu. Or you can get in touch with Marty and he'll hook you up with us. So if you do contact us, these are some of the consultants. There's Keith. You just saw his face. These are some of the experts that will be able to help you with your data. So we have a wide range with different kinds of expertise, and for the most part, we are all human, except for maybe Wyman Miles down there from IT. We can't get a picture of him for some reason. So I mentioned really quickly, we have a website with lots of different data management services info, and we're increasing the amount of training material on the website. So I invite you to go check out our website. As you just saw, we have a consultant pool. So we have a ticketing and triage system. So if you send that email to RDMSG Help, it will go to one of those human beings and they will respond to you and be able to sit down and actually have a conversation with you about your needs. We also do information sessions on NSF data management plans as well as other questions you might have. For example, if you're thinking about depositing data into the institutional repository eCommons, then we can do an information session on depositing information into eCommons. So different information sessions we can do. We do have operating principles. We pledge that we will provide timely and professional assistance. We frequently get questions the night before the grant is due, and we will do our best to respond to that. But if you give us a little bit more lead time, we can definitely do a better job with helping you with your data management plan. We do encourage best practices in data management, and we do treat the information that you give us as confidential. So we might share information with another consultant. So if you have questions about GIS data in addition to some other type of data, I might consult with Keith to help answer the GIS questions. So we will consult inside the group, but we will treat your information as confidential and we won't share it outside of the group. And we refer you to the most appropriate services at Cornell or elsewhere. So if the most appropriate service is not a Cornell service, we'll refer you out. And that's it for me. I was worried about time, but I think I made it. So questions for any of us?
Hi Marty, it's Mike.
Hey, Mike.
I was wondering if, for our people here, if somebody could talk a little bit about the form for requesting an instruction session, and if they would use that if they wanted a session here at GLIR.
Thanks, Mike. They're certainly welcome to use that form, and we would always then make the connection with the right person for leading that instruction. And I should have pointed out earlier that I'm the liaison to the horticulture department, and that includes the people who are based here in Ithaca as well as those who are based in Geneva. But Mike is really the first point of contact in Geneva. In almost all cases, it's the easiest just to be in touch with Mike, and he can either handle the question or refer it to me or somebody else in Man Library. So there's a lot of collaboration back and forth. Mike has been teaching some sessions in Geneva, not just for Cornell students, because there aren't a lot of Cornell students in Geneva, but actually teaching sessions for the Enology and Viticulture program that's part of the Finger Lakes Community College, because they come to the library there to use that material. Since Geneva has the bulk of the Enology and Viticulture literature within the Cornell library system. So feel free, Geneva people, to use that form or the research consultation form, but also feel free to contact Mike directly.
One of the things, like Bill and I have encountered this with some of our newer students, graduate students will say, okay, have you used Web of Science to search for resources? And a lot of times they haven't. So then we'll just spend 5 or 10 minutes going through that. But I'm wondering if you offer kind of an entry-level session for grad students that we could send to you, or invite them to, we use Web of Science. This is one that we can get on our radar screen.
Yeah, no, that's great. That would be an example where you could refer them to the library for a consultation. We'll be glad to do that for a graduate student in particular, who's ready to dig into the literature, wanting to know, what resources might be most appropriate for their particular research. And so we'd be glad to sit down for an hour with somebody on that. Kelly, do we have any general sessions on research?
We don't have any workshops for Web of Science, but that's something you could request, and we can try that one up and see how many people show up to it.
Yeah, we have had general sort of introductory courses to doing library literature research in the past, just open workshops that weren't integrated into a course, and over time the interest in that had diminished, and so, but if there's demand for that, we could consider doing that again. We do have some other open workshops that aren't course specific, but I don't know that we have one specifically on that. Go ahead, Sarah.
We have one on PubMed, but
On
not Web of
PubMed, okay.
Science. Yeah, we're doing that on a trial basis. So we do have one for PubMed later this semester.
Somebody has come and taken away the 4th floor of the library for us. Or is the 3rd floor going to be available in the years to come? I'm hoping.
Are you looking for space?
Well, I used to enjoy working on the 4th floor. Now I'm down on the 3rd floor. But I'm just hoping that over time, all of the books don't, go out to the annex, and we end up with just a big server sitting there in the middle of it. I love all the electronic access, but I also, and I think a lot of people like, having some space up there too. Yeah. So I hope the 3rd floor doesn't go away, I guess.
Well, we hope so too, and we've been assured at this point that that we've given up as much space as we're going to be giving up in the library. And what he's alluding to is that we did consolidate the collection substantially, the print collection, and a significant portion of that collection went to the annex. There's still a lot of print material in the library. So the library space is primarily the first, second, and third floor at this point. And what is going to change perhaps the most is we're going to be increasing the amount of collaborative and study space for students. Of course, anybody can use it, but that's our target audience for the library. So you saw some of the different types of space that we have been providing, and we see enormous amount of use of that, and we'll be continuing to expand that. Some of you may remember or know that some of the second floor space is currently being occupied by non-library staff from human ecology and from the CALS and human ecology business offices, and they will be moving out in the next little while to other space, and we will be regaining what's on the second floor non-library office right now, and that will be increasing the amount of space available for study space and collaborative workspace and the like. I feel strongly, and I think it's fair to say that the library feels strongly, that we're a residential institution, and we really need to make that student experience, maximize that student experience in the library, as well as throughout the campus. I think that many students, particularly undergraduate students, are increasingly taking online courses, and if we're going to really compete with that, we need to make that residential experience substantially better than an online experience can be. And so on the part of the library, having a diversity of study and activity spaces, research spaces is very important. Thank you.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.